Good evening and welcome to a special edition of the Courtside Seats post-game show. This is the CAA preview tournament show.
Yep. That was good.
Presented by the Green Turtle. I'm Cody Norman here with Daniel Zimmett and Mark Mansdorfer. Tomorrow, we will hit the road for Richmond to see our Patriots take on the Drexel Dragons in round one of the CAA tournament.
Yeah, but first let's run down the season recap real quick. Patriots finished 17-13 overall, 10-8 in the conference, which was good for fourth in the CAA. We actually lost 6 games at home this season. We played better on the road. In fact, we were 6-3 overall on the road, so a little different than we've been experiencing lately.
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of been a weird season, just really across the entire conference this year. Mm-hmm. And, I think that our season just kind of exemplifies that oddity.
Yeah, the whole season, all throughout the CAA, nothing's been normal this season.
No, nothing has been normal. There was one weekend towards the end of the season that I can remember that, all the home teams lost.
Yeah.
Every home team's lost. I believe our record is something like 2-6 overall in the conference on senior night.
Right.
We've won, or the only 2 teams that have won, or there have only been 2 teams that have won this year on senior night, which is unheard of.
Well, yeah, I mean, you talk about, record at home, and we mentioned that we played better on the road this year. Through 07 and 08 season to last season, we were 67-7 playing in the Patriot Center. This season, 7-6.
Well, you guys remember even, 3 years ago when the 3 of us started going to Mason, and it was a sure win.
Right.
The minute
Easy
you
win.
Stepped into the Patriot Center, you might as well chalk up a win because the Patriots inside the Patriot Center are unbeatable.
Right.
There wasn't even a question.
Yeah.
Right. I think all of us would walk into that arena and well, here comes another win. Let's just watch us dominate again.
Right.
Right.
And there was a little bit of disappointment I felt throughout the season. 17-13, a good season, nonetheless. But the CAA record 4-5. The last time we finished below 500 was Coach Larinaga's first season. So it's not necessarily bad, just different.
Right. And I mean, we know what Coach L walked into.
Right.
That was back pre-Final Four days, pre days where anybody even knew what George Mason was or who George Mason was.
Right.
We were James Madison or James Mason. I'm not sure which.
People didn't know us at all. Yeah. I mean, it was a little weak in the CAA, but the start of the season, phenomenal.
Right.
I mean, 5-2, big home opener against UVA to start it off. Win 63-59. Fell to New Mexico. Only one of those 2 losses was to New Mexico. Number 12 now in the country, and we really lost in like the last 16 seconds.
Right. That was one. We talked about this early on. That was, going 6-1 at that point, beating New Mexico, beating the Lobos in the Paradise Jam would have been, outstanding to start our season in the first 7 games of the season, really the first 4 games of the season. To have a win against UVA and to have a win against New Mexico would have been crucial going forward. But as you mentioned, the last, I believe, 10 seconds of that game, we squandered a 5-point lead and wound up losing that game by 1 point, which I still don't know how it happened.
I still remember watching it. I think all of us were in shock. It was like jaws on the floor kind of thing.
Yeah.
Just, what? How did it happen? Sort of.
I mean, that's how it's been all season, though. I mean, you win by, 2 or 3, or we lose by 2 or 3. Every game has been close. And at one point, midway through the season, I thought, can we just blow someone out in the Patriot Center? Can we just knock someone totally out of here?
Right.
We couldn't do it, at least for the first half of the year.
No, there was no killer instinct, I don't think, on either side. I don't even think it was from us, and it wasn't from any other team in the conference.
Right.
That, we'd go up by 10, or they'd go up by 10 or 12 or 15 or whatever the case is, and with the exception of a few games, nobody had that instinct to just step on somebody's throat and get rid of them there. It was, you're up by 12, you're up by 15. Normally in this conference, that's the game. Game's over, especially if you're the home team, that's the game. This year, a 20-point lead wasn't safe. A 27-point lead wasn't safe.
For us, especially,
against Drexel.
Yeah. Right.
So, it was been all around just a strange season for the CAA, for Mason, for the NCAA.
Right. Yeah, it really has. And really kind of what surprised me with going back to the way that we started this season. We started strong despite really what we all agree with is the fact that, our rotation wasn't really even set.
Yeah. Right.
You know, and it seemed like every single game it was, you know, what lineup are we going with? It was like a shuffled deck of cards that he was just throwing out a new set every time.
Exactly.
Right.
Yeah, I mean, you mentioned it a little bit. Like you had the loss of Johnny Williams, brought in John Arledge, Eric Copes recovering from injury all throughout the season, changes in guards. You know, no true sixth man. I think all season. Like you mentioned, Mark, it was like a deck of cards.
Yeah.
What are you going to get? We didn't know every game. What was going to be on that paper?
52 card pickup. Let's go.
Yeah.
I mean, the good thing though, you know, there's pluses and minuses to it. Obviously, you know, on both sides. I think we've talked a little bit about the minuses. You know, as far as, you know, there's some guys that don't know their role. There's, you know, guys that start the season. You got a guy in Anale Okoloji who starts the season, and now towards the end of the season he's not playing very much. He's getting 2, 3, 4, 5 minutes a game now. But the pluses, you know, that means we have the depth.
Right.
You know, when you can't decide who you want in there, that's a good problem to have.
When I was out on injured reserve in the middle of the season, I got a chance to watch a good amount of games on television.
Right.
And the announcers, every game, said, you know, no matter what happens on the court from the starters, Mason wins the depth battle.
Yeah.
Every announcer, it could have been a different announcer, different play-by-play, different color guy.
Right.
Everyone talked about our depth, and throughout the game they said, well, this guy didn't start. Look, he's got 19. This guy didn't start. He's got 11 boards.
Right.
Every single person, not just us as homers, but the CAA thinks we're deep.
Right. Well, you look at guys like Marko Gianicic, guys like Patrick Holloway, Vertrell Vaughns, Von Gray. You know, the list goes on. You know, and I'm not even including guys like John Arledge, who spent some time on the bench, or Corey Edwards, who spent some time on the bench here and there. You know, there were games where Sherrod Wright wasn't even out on the floor in the closing minutes.
Right.
You know, that's how deep we were. That was, you know what, if somebody's playing really well, if somebody's hot, if somebody's, you know, got it going, Sherrod may not see the floor.
Right.
Right. And we've seen that really kind of. It was almost been the tale of two halves in terms of this season.
Right.
You know, much like our games have gone, really.
Right.
And you know, in the sense that Sherrod just absolutely dominated this, you know, this first half of the season, where it would seem like he was scoring 20 points every night.
Right.
And then now, you know, going back, you know, looking at the second half of the season, here we are, and you know, it seems like a different guy's the leading scorer every night.
Right. I mean, in the last 5 games, Marko Gianicic, John Arledge, Patrick Holloway, Sherrod Wright, you know, all the different point scorers and point leaders out there. And as you mentioned, it was always Sherrod at the beginning. It was constantly Sherrod. I still think, and we're going to get into our stars of the tournament a little later, but I still think Sherrod is the backbone of this team.
Well, Sherrod led the team. We were, 30 games? You know, 17 and 13, so 30 games we've played. Sherrod Wright led the team in scoring 19 of those games.
Yeah.
Right.
You know, almost 2/3 of the game. That's why, you know, when you talk about 4 out of the last 5 games, there was a different score.
Right.
You know, when you talk about things like that, it's like, how did that happen?
Right.
You know, where are these guys coming from? Where, you know, the first 19 games or the first, you know, 20 games of the season, Sherrod was probably the leading scorer for, you know, 18 of them.
Yeah.
You know, and now all of a sudden he's not anymore.
Well, I mean, you mentioned, you know, where were these guys, and I think it has a lot to do with the roles. I think guys started to slowly figure out their role on the team. You know, if a guy is only going to see 6 minutes, he figures out he's got to make the most of those 6 minutes. And I think that's where you're going to start, why we started to see the emergence of these different guys. As you mentioned, 5 different leading scorers in the last 5 games. I think it's because guys figured out their roles on the team.
Yeah, I absolutely agree with that. That, you know, and I don't think all of the guys have figured out their roles. You know, which I think is going to be a little bit of carryover in the next season. That happens when you got a roster full of juniors and sophomores and, you know, and a couple freshmen sprinkled in there. You know, but to have, you know, John Arledge step up at the end of the year, to have, you know, Eric Copes really step up at the end of the year going forward is huge.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, we're going to step away for a quick commercial break. When we come back, yesterday I had a chance to sit down with head coach Paul Hewitt. We'll check out that interview. Stick around. Welcome back to the Courtside Seats CAA Tournament Preview Show. I'm Daniel Zimmet, joined by Cody Norman and Mark Mansdorfer over here to my left. Yesterday I got a chance to sit down with head coach Paul Hewitt and talk to him about his outlook coming up here on the tournament this weekend. Let's check it out now. an automatic berth to the NCAA tournament?
Win Saturday, Sunday, and Monday. That's what we're going to have to do.
Can you elaborate on a game plan going in?
You know, our team, when we've had our issues, we haven't rebounded the ball. We haven't played particularly tough. If we play with the right amount of toughness, we have an excellent shot to win the tournament.
Is there anyone on the roster right now you think doesn't really get the credit they deserve for their contribution to this team?
That's a great question. I think Corey Edwards has been a real stabilizing force for us. When he has played well, we've been really, really good. The other guys is probably Brian Allen. Now, people see him out there playing, but I would say right now, over the last 10 games, he's probably been our best player.
Can you talk about kind of the contribution of Brian and Corey on the court together? You know, we saw this later in the season, them start together.
Well, I think when you look at it, you'll see our turnover numbers have gone down. Our offensive production has gone up. They both allow us, having them both out there, allow us to play a little faster, move the ball a little more efficiently, and get good shots.
What were some of your goals coming into this season?
To go undefeated. You know, obviously, winning the league, regular season, coming in first place, and of course, the next goal is to try to win the conference tournament.
Mm-hmm. You know, the conference has changed so much this year. The tournament is going to be different this year. How does your approach change going into the tournament?
It doesn't change. You know, we had the same approach that I've always had 15 years. I don't know how many years now as the head coach, and that's, you know, we try to recreate a preseason feeling. So we had 2 practices on Monday and Tuesday, mixed in some individual instruction, and really did a lot of things that we would normally do preseason. We gave them off yesterday, and then Thursday and Friday we really got back. Thursday we got after pretty good, and we'll get after tomorrow before we drive down to Richmond. You
talked about all season how important the fans are, especially here. You know, how important are they going to be down in Richmond, especially the Green Machine being down there too? How much will that affect the team's play? I think it'll have a very positive effect. Having Doc and his people down there, and sure, we always have, you know, pretty good representation down there. I think it makes our guys feel. We're back here at the Green Turtle in the CAA preview show presented by yours truly, the Green Turtle. This season, coming into this season, you know, the Patriots, as you heard Coach Hewitt kind of allude to, we had really high expectations, you know, finishing third, and I guess maybe not so high expectations for what this program has done, 20-plus win seasons, you know, a whole string of them. You know, especially when Coach Larinaga was here and into the first year of Coach Hewitt's tenure. You know, but some pretty decent high expectations, and we met them. You know, but it feels like we haven't. Right, I think it's just the luxury that we've had here. Like you mentioned, you know, when Coach L was here, especially on the back end of his time here, when we were here specifically, it was all 20-win seasons. We thought we were going to the NCAA tournament automatically every year. We also had the luxury of players like Cam Long, Ryan Pearson, Mike Morrison while we were here. We were still trying to figure out, you know, who that leader's going to be. So I agree, we met some of those expectations, but looking a little bit past, we didn't meet what we previously have experienced.
Yeah, and I think we mentioned it before that, you know, or we were talking about it, you know, earlier before the show started, that I kind of equated it to, you know, it's like the Yankees not making the playoffs. Right. In the sense that, you know, we're so used to being one of the better teams in the conference that when you're not considered to be the best team in the conference, it just seems weird. Right. You know, and I think that it plays off, like you said, losing the Mike Morrisons, losing the Ryan Pearsons, losing those guys, that senior leadership. I think not having a senior on our team this year, you know, may have hurt us a little bit in a sense that no one kind of, you know, grabbed the bull by its horn, so to speak, and really, you know, took that leadership role and ran with it.
You know, if I can piggyback off of your Yankees analogy, I think part of it is, you know, you talk about being considered the best in your conference or the best, you know, in a division like baseball or whatever the case is. You know, when we're getting beaten by Old Dominion or we're getting beat by VCU, I think that's tolerable, just as, you know, the Yankees getting beat by, you know, the Boston Red Sox. But it almost feels like this season that we're getting beat by the Blue Jays. Right. You know what I mean? Or you know what I mean, with right. Northeastern and the Delawares, where at the beginning, at least, you know, 3 years ago or 4 years ago when you guys and I got here, those teams were kind of the bottom dwellers. They were
bottom middle.
Right.
Yeah.
You know, when Delaware came to town or we went to Delaware, that was a win.
Yeah.
You know, there was no question about it. Northeastern obviously was a little bit tougher to play at, you know, just given the distance, but it was neither one of those teams really scared you, especially come CAA tournaments.
Yeah, I agree with you there. And, we heard another thing that Coach Hugh had said in the interview of how important the fans are to this team. And I think in years past, we've traveled pretty well to this tournament. What do you guys think? Do you think that the fans are going to really help us through the tournament? Because, you could have argued last year and years prior that it was going to do it at home. Well, we saw this season that the home, winning at home wasn't really our forte.
Right.
Is it going to matter down there in Richmond?
Maybe it's better if we don't travel away.
Right.
You know what I mean? It might be, like you mentioned, we have played better on the road, so maybe it's better that everybody stay home. I'm kidding. Don't stay home.
Don't stay home.
Come out to Richmond. But it has been strange.
Yeah.
And I think part of that has to do with everything that happened in the offseason as far as losing VCU. You lose a little bit of spark. The fan base really got riled up to play VCU, to play Old Dominion, and really compete against the best teams in our conference, or teams that have perennially been the best teams in the conference.
Right.
But it's tough to get up for a game against Drexel or Delaware, and I don't want to take anything away from those teams, but they're not it's not the 2-hour drive, it's not the rival that VCU is.
Right.
Well, and the history is not there. I think, at least in our time, what I remember when I think of the VCU games, you think of, all those tournament games where they beat us, and those games where, the buzzer beaters and everything. It was all close games. And I think that, we don't have that history necessarily with those other teams in our conference, which I think is kind of where that, kind of awkward stage, I guess you could say, with those other teams comes from.
Right, and I think, a middle of the pack going to this tournament is not a bad thing.
No.
We could be sitting much worse in this tournament right now. And I think with, the type of play we've seen in years past where we've been good, I think teams might, come into our game a little loose. They might not think of us as seriously when we've proven we can be a dominant team. And we've said it over and over again, not to hit on Hofstra or anything, but we think 6 teams can win this tournament.
Right.
We really do think 6 teams can win it.
Right. Honestly, in years past, it has mattered. You want that number 1, the number 2 seed, especially because you get the bye, obviously on that Friday. But this year, we're sitting at a 4 seed. We're playing Drexel. If we're sitting at a seed lower than that, we're playing Delaware. We're playing Northeastern going into round 2. It doesn't matter.
Right.
We're gonna have to beat some quality teams because everyone is kind of on that same level this year.
Absolutely. And speaking of some quality teams, we're going to take a quick commercial break, and when we come back, we are going to give our tournament preview with picks included right here on the CAA Preview Show, live from the Green Turtle in Fairfax. Stick around.
Welcome back to the CAA Preview Show presented by the Green Turtle. We're going to head down to Richmond tomorrow to see the Patriots take on the Drexel Dragons in round 1. The Patriots 29-23 all-time overall in the CAA tournament. Haven't lost to a team other than VCU in 3 years. Yeah. That bodes well for us, right?
Right. So we're not going to lose to VCU this year. We're actually not going to lose at all. If you're some of us on this table, Mark, why don't you start out with this half of the table over here? Why don't you start out with your first game prediction, Mason versus Drexel?
All right, my first game, we got Mason versus Drexel. Got to go with George Mason here. I just think that our most complete game this season has definitely been our game against Drexel. That was actually in Philly that I went to. I think that was our most complete game. I think we played great basketball against Drexel this year. We did blow the lead. I think we just had a rough half. So really 3 out of 4 halves against a team in a season like this. it's kind of, you know, pretty solid for us. So I think you got to go with Mason here.
You know, Mark, I'm going to agree with you here. I'm going Mason in the first game. We've been focusing on them all week. I think we got to figure out how to shut down either Massanet or Lee. Shut down one of the guards. We've been struggling with some outside presence this year. Shut down one of the guards, and the other one, we can handle the other one. I think our inside game, especially as of late, has been much better, so I think we'll be able to win the inside game too. I'm taking Mason in game one.
You know what? I think this team has gotten progressively better as the season has gone on, especially as Eric Copes has grown. But I'm taking Mason too.
Yep.
You know, I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to take Mason in the first round against Drexel because for the same reason Mark's talking. You know, we're up 27 points and a half in that game at home, and you know, perhaps more so because, yes, Drexel has two big bodies. We heard John talk about yesterday, and you'll hear in a little while, John talk about, you know, they have two Eric Copeses underneath the basket.
Yeah.
The problem I have is two Eric Copeses can guard John Arthurs underneath the basket, but they can't guard him away from the basket, which I think John is going to have an outstanding game.
Okay. That sounds good to me. So we're all taking Mason game one. Next game on the charts, Hofstra playing Delaware.
This one's just, I think, pretty easy for all of us. I don't think any of us really give Hofstra too much of a chance. So I'm going Delaware. Not much more to say about that. You know, I just think Delaware is too good with you know, Jamil Hagan's inside as well as Devin Sadler.
I'm going Delaware too, as you could just see. Hofstra is just too weak of a team for me this season. Devon Sadler, Jamil Higgins, you said it all, Mark. Not much else to say there. I think that's the easiest game to pick in this tournament.
Right, and you know what? This isn't a knock on Mo Cassera at all.
No.
Mo Cassera is an outstanding coach, but Hofstra was delivered a knockout blow, you know, in the first part of this season. So, an absolutely knockout blow, devastating blow for Hofstra. So, I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to take Delaware.
No, I think we can agree that was all the easiest pick of the tournament.
I think all of us looked at that game and we're like, yep.
Next game going through JMU versus William and Mary. I'm calling this the hardest game to pick of the tournament.
I would say that this is definitely the toughest one to pick as well. I'm going with JMU though. You know, watching at that last game of the season, William and Mary was up big on JMU. I believe it was 19 points and blew it at home. And I think whenever you blow a lead like that at home, I think it's tough. I know it happened to Mason, but with it being so recent, I think JMU's got the confidence.
Yeah, you know, I'm going actually with William and Mary in this game. Thornton and Rusthoven, the way that they complement each other. Thornton with the outside shot, Rusthoven with that inside presence. He's very unorthodox. When you look at him, you wouldn't think he's going to be able to bang inside. He absolutely can. He can put up a double-double down there against JMU. I'm going William and Mary in that game.
I think you're absolutely right. This team is certainly much more complete than it has been in the past. William and Mary is known as, you know, a three-point shooting team, at least as far as we've been here. But I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to take JMU too. I disagree with both of you that this is the hardest game to pick. I think the Mason Drexel game is extremely difficult to pick in the first round.
All right, next game coming up. This is where we differ. We're into round two. We're into the next day now. Northeastern versus George Mason.
Got to go with the homer here again. I'm going Mason. But really, my biggest reason is, you know, we've had two tough losses against Northeastern this year, and I think when you have those tough losses, Dan, you've always said it, it's tough to beat a team 3 times in a season. And I just don't see this team coming out and laying an egg again. I think that, you know, they're going to come out mean, they're going to come out nasty, and I think we are, like we've said, the deepest team in this conference, and I think that depth will help us.
You know, I agree with you. I'm going with this right here. I'm picking from the heart. I'm going with Mason in this game against Northeastern. You know, we shut down Jonathan Lee. Same thing going back to Drexel. You got to shut down the perimeter, so take Jonathan Lee down. As you mentioned, tough to beat the same team 3 times in 1 year, especially Northeastern, a team that has seen the surge this season. Bill Cohen doing an excellent job up there, but I'm going with Mason going into Monday, the championship.
You know, as good as our defense has been all season long, and it has been great, especially, you know, and we've gotten beat a lot on the boards, I think. And while that doesn't really doesn't necessarily say that you've been beaten by teams with good guards, I think we have.
Right.
I think guard play has really, you know, been our Achilles heel all season long. We struggle against those dynamic front courts. And Northeastern is incredibly deep. We talked about this a few times on the pregame show that, you know, there are teams in the conference, obviously, who have conference players of the week and all of that. Northeastern has 3 guys who have been Conference Player of the Week at one point or another. And the probable Coach of the Year, as you mentioned, Bill Cohen. To me, they're the unknown in this conference. And I'm always afraid of the unknown. I'm gonna go ahead and I'm gonna take Northeastern. Boo me.
We won't hurt you. We can still be friends. We'll be able to at least finish the show. We'll be able to finish the show. We're on to Monday now with the championship. Mark, who's getting the automatic berth?
I think Mason's going to take it. I think Delaware?
Yeah,
I'm picking Delaware.
I
game
went
5.
too many
You're
games.
ahead of yourself.
I went ahead of
Ahead of
myself.
yourself.
Sorry. We're going game 5, the second game on Sunday.
Right, me.
That was my fault. I'll take that.
Okay. I'm sorry. I was confused. I went and rolled with it.
It was me. Go ahead.
Delaware versus JMU. I think again you got to go with Delaware. We've said it already with Jamil Higgins as well as Devon Sadler. I think those two are just going to be too good for JMU. I don't think JMU is deep enough to beat Delaware.
Yeah, I agree with you. Devon Sadler, Jamil Higgins, they can smell it from there. The championship that is. Higgins is leaving the next year. Devon Sadler coming back. Those two. If you're going to go by comparison of big man to shooter, I take Higgins over Rustover, and I take Sadler over Thornton any day of the week.
This one,
Delaware's going to the championship.
Okay, I'm sorry, I cut you off.
It's okay.
This one, I absolutely agree with you guys. I think Delaware walks away with a victory here against JMU. I don't think JMU matches up very well with them, and actually, Delaware kind of reminds me of the teams that Old Dominion and Blaine Taylor had for the last few years, where they're not really they're not great at any one thing. They have a really good rebounder and post presence in Higgins. They have a great scorer in Devon Sadler, but it's not like they're going to put up a lot of points on offense.
Right.
They're not a great defensive team, but rebounds. Rebound the basketball. Jamel Higgins, one of the best in the country at rebounding the basketball. More possessions equals more points. So I think Delaware.
So we all got the same Delaware in the championship. Now we can actually move on to the championship game. Who do you got winning it all?
All right, winning it all. Got to go with George Mason. You know what? Something we haven't seen yet. In our time here.
True.
We haven't even made it to championship Monday in our time here.
Nope.
And I think that we're going to see it this season. I think that's just the way that this season has gone, in a sense that, it's really just been kind of crazy. And I think that, as Cody's mentioned, that we've really come on strong recently. And I think that strength, that depth is going to carry us through a tough 3 games and 3 day stretch.
I'm going with the heart again on this pick. I think the 2 wins, we're going to ride that all the way to the championship. We've proven we can shut down Jamil Higgins on both occasions this season. Eric Hope's really surging. John Arledge surging. Mark Uglianic surging. I'm not worried about the inside game. Contain Devon Sadler has been my theme this whole time. Just contain the guards and we'll be able to take home the victory, automatic berth going into the NCAA tournament.
I tell you, I was sitting at work today and I started second guessing myself on this one with Northeastern versus Delaware. I'm picking Northeastern.
Okay.
At least on that screen,
yeah.
I'm picking Northeastern. But I haven't convinced myself yet. Maybe it's because of, I am afraid of the unknown.
Right.
But Northeastern led by 2 seniors, 6'4" shooter, Joel Smith. And, the heart and soul of that team, as you have mentioned, Jonathan Lee, 13.8 points a game, 4+ assists, 4+ rebounds. He wants to get to the rim. And, the third head to that 3-headed attack is Quincy Ford.
Yeah.
And back on February 13th, Northeastern lost the matchup 76-74 in overtime. Lee and Quincy Ford were almost uncontainable in that game. Joel Smith didn't play. So the addition of Joel Smith to this, to the lineup in this game, I think throws them over the top, and I got to pick Northeastern to win.
And that would be fitting, Bill Cohen, like you said, probable player of the year, coach of the year,
right.
Jonathan Lee, possible player of the year.
Right.
Kane, we'll hopefully be finding out in this show here tonight and reveal those to you. But Mark's taking Mason, I'm taking Mason, Cody, the lonesome, taking Northeastern here today. We're going to step away for another quick commercial break. When we come back, yesterday, Cody had a chance to sit down with one of Mason's big men, Jonathan Arledge. We'll check out that interview when we come back.
Welcome back to the CAA preview show presented by the Green Turtle. I'm going to give a special shout out to Rich and friends sitting at the table right over here next to us. Yesterday I had a chance to sit down with John Arledge for an interview. You guys take a look. In order for you to deem this season a success, what would have to happen this weekend?
Obviously a CAA championship. We want to come out strong. First game against Drexel. It's going to be a good game, a good first game. Like, Drexel's a real good team, real physical, rebounded team, and we always have good games with them, close games. And that's one game we was looking forward to, but not being the first game, you know. But it worked out the way it did, and we got Drexel first. But what we want to come out with is a championship, so that we can get a deep run and try and get a deep run into the NCAA.
Now, is that the only way this season is a success? You guys have, a team full of young guys. No seniors really on this team. So is that the only way this is a success for you?
Now, yeah, because we kind of dug ourselves in a hole with a few losses that we had. And in order to come out with okay, we turned it around and had a good season, is if we win the CAA championship. And then after we win that, make a run into the NCAA tournament. Now, when you first came to Mason, you didn't have the luxury of necessarily having a true coach for big men. Now, with Roland Houston coming in last year, how much has that affected your game, and what kind of impact has that had on you? Man, tremendous. Coach Houston, he really instilled the desire and fire to win, and doing whatever it takes to win. And he's really helping me out with that and incorporating that into me. And he's not letting up, no matter what, on me. And he knows that if I have it going, and if I have that going every game, that drive to win, we're going to be as good as anybody in the country.
And how does practicing against a guy like Eric Cope, somebody who's big, strong, physical, how does practicing against him help prepare you for games, especially against a team like Drexel?
Yeah, it's just a bunch of the two big guys that got started. It's just two Eric Copes. So, I mean, going against Eric every day in practice is very helpful. And preparing for teams like Drexel, who have big, wide, solid guys who just sit down there and just rebound the ball, So just learning how to maneuver around them or pick spots to get them uncomfortable or whatnot to get the ball and rebound.
And what were your goals coming into this season? Obviously, your freshman year didn't play a whole lot. Last year, you were kind of off and on. And even the beginning of this year, there were games that you saw limited minutes. So what were your goals coming in?
To do whatever it takes for my team to win, whatever it is, whether it's in practice or whether it is during the game or off the court. So just being helpful and being able to be at the end of the day, I did what I could to help my team win.
And do you feel like you've accomplished those goals?
If we end up with the CAA championship, which is one of our team goals, then yes.
So to be determined.
Yes.
And it really seemed like after the loss of Johnny Williams, I guess probably about 10 games or so ago now, you really stepped your game up a lot. So how did the loss of a guy like Johnny from the lineup and from the rotation, how did that change your approach, or how did that affect your game?
Losing Johnny was really a eye opener for everyone. Especially you can tell it really opened my eyes up the most, because I just stepped my game up completely. But Johnny, he really brings a lot to the table, offensively, defensively. His size also. Him and Eric are almost the same size. So his size in the paint and rebounding and defending we're missing that, and his ability to score, Johnny's ability to score. So I'm just trying to like pick up the slack that since Johnny's gone, in whatever way I can. And most of it so far has been in scoring, but I know that I need to focus more on defense and rebounding for this team. And that's the only way that we're going to win a CAA championship, if I defend and rebound.
Now, obviously your prediction going into this weekend is for you guys to win a CAA championship. What about beyond that? What is your prediction moving forward into the NCAA tournament?
NCAA tournament? Making a run, man. Making a run. We all come together and we all believe in each other, then we're going to make a deep run in that tournament.
Welcome back to the CAA preview show right here at the Green Turtle in Fairfax. We just heard John Arledge talking a little bit about his mindset after Johnny Williams went down with concussion, still down over the last probably 8 or 10 games now. And John has really stepped up, and we talked about him a little bit, when we're talking about our brackets. He's a guy that you have to mention, you can't overlook, from somebody who was coming off the bench and playing sparingly. At the beginning of the season, John has been the all-star.
Right, well, if you think back to when we thought John might be a 3 on the starting lineup, way back when the season started, it's because of that mid-ranger he has. He can shoot it from the elbow right around the free throw line, and he can also bang inside now. He talked about how he practices against Eric Copes, and that really helps him get stronger. I think those are 2 reasons that he's really emerged. He's found that mid-range, and he's figured out how to bang inside. Yeah. That's why he's scoring, 19, 20, 17 points a night.
Well, and I think what's most deadly is, I can't tell you how many times I've probably seen him do that back to the basket turnaround, shot, and he drills it. Yeah. If he can hit that consistently, that's deadly. That is a deadly offensive threat, and I think that he's proven that he can do that, recently.
Well, weren't you the person that said a lot of people are saying if there's one guy going to the NBA on this team, it's John Arledge?
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, you can see that the raw talent that's there, that he's got that skill.
Right, absolutely. And you guys are talking a lot about offense, but to me, John has showed significant improvements, and I think this is why he's really seen, aside from Johnny being down, but this is why he's seen a lot more time on the floor because of his defensive effort. He's obviously still a little bit raw on the defensive end, picks up some silly fouls from time to time, has gotten himself into foul trouble on occasion, but he's improved leaps and bounds defensively. Going up and blocking shots, playing against some bigger, stronger guys, and we're going to see him play against some big, strong guys, against, in McCoy and Ruffin.
Right. Yeah. And I think to go along with that, I think he's finally learned how to use that length that he's been, fortunate enough to have. I think he's just when you think of him, he is a lanky, tall guy. He's not big, but he uses that length very well, and he's athletic enough that he can move his feet well enough that I think that's what makes him so good defending, as you said.
Yeah, I think his head is right. I think his mindset is right. Once you start to get some success, you start to get more confident. Right. And you can see it. If he throws down a big dunk, you can see him get animated, kind of throw his arms up in the air, similar to how we saw Anale do it back when he was starting, and he was the emotional leader. I think once John's head became in the right mindset, like it is now, this is why we're seeing the 19, 20 points a night.
Right, and to that point, I think once John Arledge, maybe beginning in his freshman, sophomore year, the one thing holding John Arledge back was John Arledge. Yeah. And right now, as well as he has played, he's huge. And he's going to be huge moving forward into the CAA tournament starting tomorrow.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, we're going to take another quick commercial break right here. We still got a whole lot of show coming up here after the show. Make sure you come hang out with us right here at the Green Turtle in Fairfax. Stick around for more.
Welcome back to the Courtside Seats CAA preview show, not preseason show. Coach Hewitt threw me off yesterday talking a little bit about getting back into the mindset of preseason. Yeah. So that's where I'm stuck. I'm in the mindset of preseason. Big shout out to Father Peter Nicetta, living on a prayer, heading into Richmond tomorrow. We're starting a little bit of talking about the parity in this conference, close games, a lot of close games. Yeah. I think this might be the closest that our conference has been, at least in the 4 years that we've been here.
You know, it's really interesting, and I agree with you first to say that, but it's interesting when you lose teams like VCU, a team that we've seen us go close to the end with in a lot of games, and we're going to call this year our closest year. Yeah. When you see teams like ODU at the bottom with Northeastern at the top, you wouldn't expect these games to be so close, I feel like. But you are. Yeah, I think this is just a weird season.
I think this season has really been a top-down throughout the entire conference is close, whereas, you know, we've kind of already mentioned it before in the, you know, today, just in the fact that it used to be, you know, 3-4 teams at the top, and then there was everyone else. Right. You know, and this year it hasn't been like that at all. No. You went into every game, you know, and I wrote it down here. You had to scoreboard watch. Yeah. You had to watch the scoreboard because you had no clue who was going to win the games. Right. You know, and I think that goes back to all our picks. You know, in the sense that every game was pretty tough. Right. You know, in the sense that you don't know who's going to win or who's going to show up that day, who's going to put together a solid 40 minutes of basketball.
Right. When you talk about scoreboard watching, though, if you know, it was, we had it several times this season where, you know, if we win, we're in second place. Yeah. If we lose, we're in sixth place.
It's top to bottom. You just jump around.
Right. You know, which is absolutely absurd. There's an outstanding piece on GoMason.com right now about this same topic from Dick Patrick, where, you know, he talks about, you know, the close games, the small margins of victory, but, you know, relating that back to the NCAA as a whole. You know, just in the last 48 hours, number 5, number 6, number 13, 16, 19, 22, and 23 have all lost. Yeah. I'm running out of breath talking about it. All of those teams have lost. All but one has lost to an unranked team.
Well, Mark and I say it all season, and in fact, all of us say it. No one wants to be number one.
Right.
No one wants to be up there. Maybe that's good for us going into this tournament at a 4.
Right.
If we're going to stick to the trend of the entire NCAA, maybe we don't want to be going in at number 1.
Right. Indiana, you know, 3 separate times has been number 1. Duke at least twice has been number 1. Yep. You know, so I don't think it's just been this conference. For whatever reason, the NCAA as a whole has just been up and down. You know, Gonzaga, of all teams, Gonzaga, the number 1 team in the country for the first time in school history. It's just been, you know, crazy. And bringing it back to the CAA, Northeastern lost on senior night.
Yeah, to ODU.
To ODU. Yeah. Right. You know, the last place team in the conference, and now all of a sudden you're losing to them on senior night. You're ranked, keep in mind, Northeastern's ranked in the bottom tier of our conference heading into the preseason. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Now all of a sudden they're number 1.
Yeah, it's weird all around, and I think you can go off the reason we've been sticking up. You know, we're at the 4 right now. We've been up and down. We were at the 2 at one point, 3, 4, all around. Right. Is our depth and that we've talked about. Yeah. And especially our freshmen, I think, totally contribute to our depth. And their development has been unbelievable so far this season. I mean, Patrick Holloway, Marko Gujanic. Yeah, unbelievable.
It's been an up and down season, really, for both of them. I think we've kind of witnessed them throughout the season have, you know, the points where it seems like they're unstoppable. Right. Yeah. And then on the other side of things, where you're like, oh my God, like just take them out of there, coach. Right. You know, and I think, you know, I remember, you know, specifically the Patrick Holloway, you know, the shooting slump where it seemed like he couldn't hit anything. Right. And same thing with Marko. Marko got in and he was just struggling. And then now, you know, Marko scores 21 points against Delaware. Patrick scores 15. You know, they're dropping points left and right, and I think that they're becoming viable threats in this, you know, in this offense.
Well, you know, I said from day one, Marko Gujanic, to me, was the most game-ready freshman that we had seen in the 4 years that we had been.
And we've seen some guys. I mean, we saw Luke Hancock come through. Right. We saw some good guys come through.
Right, absolutely. And, you know, it's just been really a strange season for him. He was one of those guys who came in. Yes, he was, you know, he's a big body at 6'9" or 6'8", you know, big, thick frame. So obviously can play in the post, but he came in marketed it as, you know, that deep threat. Hasn't been that. No. You know, and he has been a very good post presence. Yeah. You know, both of those guys have progressed. You know, and you mentioned the 21 points. That's with Marko knocking down the jump shot.
Right.
And you can't mention jump shot without Patrick Holloway.
Yeah.
You know, Patrick Holloway has been, as you mentioned, glimpses of brilliance this season.
It really has.
Right, and I think the thing with Patrick that I think can excite you is the sense that when you have a shooter that is that just, you know, that ignition point is so fine. Right. In a sense that he can have a game where if he hits those first 2 shots early, it's over. Right. Because you know he's just gonna start jacking, and they're gonna fall.
I think, you know, the development of Patrick and Marko really speaks a lot to Coach Hewitt too. The confidence that he instills in freshmen guys that have never played at this level before. Patrick came in ready to shoot.
Yeah.
You know, Marco maybe a little uncomfortable at first, really thriving in the second half. A lot of credit to Coach Hewitt and his staff for instilling the confidence in these freshmen. I think that's something we're going to be able to look forward to, is other freshmen coming in.
Well, you mentioned, keeping them out on the floor, and you're talking about, the slump that Patrick went through in the middle of the year. And Coach Hewitt said, just keep shooting.
Yeah.
Keep shooting the basketball. And, to a fault maybe sometimes, Patrick's very trigger happy.
Right.
But outstanding shooter. I think the one thing that both of them really need to work on, making themselves invaluable on both sides of the floor. I think both of them right now. Marco, some nights he's the defender. He's that point guy in our press.
Right.
Some nights he's scoring 21 points but getting beat on defense. So if both of those guys can put both sides of the game together, they're going to be hard to stop.
Another thing I'd like to see Patrick really improve on, and especially at his height, I think as he develops, he's going to need to be a ball handler. And we saw it a little bit in high school when we watched a couple of his games. He gets he makes the basket and hustles up the court.
Right.
Or they make a basket and he hustles up to the corner. I think as they develop and as Brian will eventually leave, as Corey will eventually leave, Patrick's going to need to be able to handle the ball. He's not just going to be able to catch and shoot guy, I think. Last year we saw Vertrail be a ball handler at times, even though he's this year really a catch and shoot guy. So I'd like to see a little more development of ball handling out of Patrick.
Well, for me, those two guys couldn't fit any more perfect together, because Patrick, realistically, as a catch and shoot guy, you need somebody who's going to set good screens. And I'll be darned if Marco doesn't like to hit people. Marco loves it, and it's that European style. He's channeling his inner European and setting great screens. So, those two guys for the next 3 years, exciting.
I agree. Moving away from the freshmen, we talked about it earlier, how we won by 2 or 3 points, we lost by 2 or 3 points. And in years past, we seem to be able to pull out those victories, at least a lot of the memorable ones. But this year, it almost seems like we're losing those close games. We've lost 7 games this season by 5 points or less. That's the difference between being a number 1 and a number 4 right there.
Right.
What do you guys think that's from?
For me, we've just had a lot. We've mentioned it, several times. It's been weird.
Yeah.
But we've had a lot of bad bounces. But aside from the bad bounces, our struggles to me are due to untimely fouls. We've had a lot of just really silly fouls. You look, the Patriots averaging more than 20 fouls per game.
Right.
The ACC, the Big Ten, the Big 12, the SEC, and Big East combined have 4 other teams that average 20 plus fouls.
Yeah.
So that's huge. So those sorts of things. You don't have a go-to guy. Last year you had Ryan Pearson. You had you've had Cam Long in the past. You just don't have a go-to scorer.
Right, and I think you mentioned it a couple times, Cody. We have trouble putting together a full 40 minutes at times.
Right.
And I think that might, or will especially will take place down the stretch as well.
Yeah, and I think kind of going off the close game thing and what you mentioned with the foul trouble, I think that just plays to our youth and the fact, and going back to what we were talking about before with our freshmen are playing a lot of minutes, and again, without that senior leadership, I think that just plays into the fact that these guys, aren't used to the big stage.
Well, you talk about losing close games. Moving on, do we as fans, we've talked about not achieving that 20-plus win season as we put a string of those together. Do we as fans need to, kind of cut these guys a break and give Coach Hewitt enough time to get some guys in here, get his own players in here, and develop these guys before we pass judgment, or even forget about judgment, see another 20-plus win season?
I think it's for 2 main reasons. One, it's a totally new style. You gotta give these guys some time to adjust. As we mentioned, Coach Hewitt, it's like sometimes it was like throwing a deck of cards out there. We didn't know what was coming.
Right.
So you got to get used to that and not seeing guys, a full 4 out of the 5 starters or 3 out of the 5 starters with 30 minutes on there.
Yeah.
I think that's the first thing. Second, you got to give him credit for the recruiting that he's proven in the past, especially at Georgia Tech. Coach Hewitt is a proven recruiter coming into last season, which was Coach Hewitt's first year. At the preseason where all the coaches meet up. Everyone said you got to beat him now, because once he gets his guys in here, they're going to be tough to beat.
Yeah. I mean, for me, there's a lot of talk last season we were up and down. We had 20 wins last season. We were a lot of up and down portions of the season, especially at the beginning. A lot of this, in my mind, is just due to the fact that, you know, we've had, or we're sitting and watching Coach Jim Larinaga and his success at Miami, number 6 currently.
Yeah.
But, you know, let's not take anything away from Coach L, but we're not even going to partake in that argument about who's the better coach versus, you know, Coach L and Coach Hewitt. Coach Hewitt won Metro Atlantic Athletic Conference MAC tournament championship. 2 regular season championships. He's been the ACC Coach of the Year once, the MAC Coach of the Year once, and next season, CAA Coach of the Year.
I like that prediction. I'm a big fan of it.
No, and I think that really ultimately, when you look at it, Hewitt's first year, you got Mike Morrison, Ryan Pearson, Andre Cornelius. You got 3 seniors that are going to drive your team.
Yeah.
You know, and you got those 3 seniors that are going to drive the team.
Seniors that just went to the NCAA tournament.
Exactly. Yeah. That's a great point.
Yeah.
You know, in the sense that those 3 guys are going to drive that team. This year, we don't have that.
Yeah.
You know, so I think, you know, in a sense that this was a tough year. This was the transition year. And I look at next year as being that year for us to really thrive in this conference because no one's leaving. You know, the team that we have now is the team that we have moving forward, and they're going to have a season under their belt.
Right. You know, last question real quick here. This lineup we see now has been the lineup for about the past 10 games.
Yeah.
Is this what we see next year?
I think it is. I think it'll be interesting to see what happens when Johnny Williams does come back. You know, does he get put back into the starting lineup? Although it's really difficult to take John Arledge out, but you might not have to. You know, you mentioned putting John at the 3. You know, his perimeter, his outside game, his mid-range game has been good enough. I really believe this team's going to be much improved heading into next season. One more year under Coach Hewitt under their belt. One more year of experience, period, in college basketball under their belt for these guys heading into, you know, what, 6 seniors, something like that next year.
I agree. I think the question mark is Johnny Williams versus John Arledge. I think that's what we're going to have to see. But the Corey and Brian together, Eric's in there, and Sherrod in there, of course.
Right. Yeah, I agree. I don't see why you change anything.
Right.
You know, especially if we see some success, you know, this weekend down in Richmond.
Right.
Why not?
Yeah.
You know, why are you going to change anything?
Absolutely. All right, we're going to step away for another quick commercial. But first, let's check out some of the top highlights from this past season. Welcome back to the Courtside Seats CAA Tournament Preview Show. I'm Daniel Zimmett, joined by Cody Norman and Mark Mansdorfer, live from the Green Turtle here in Fairfax. Make sure you come hang out with us after the show today. A couple updates down from Richmond at the awards banquet. Jarrell Benneman, CAA Player of the Year, and his head coach, Pat Scarry, Coach of the Year. Only player from Mason to get an award this year, Sherrod Wright, second team. So I think a little bit of a different view at the Coach of the Year. I think you and I had Bill Cohen, and you had Pat Scarry.
I had Pat Scarry. I think Towson made way too much of a big turnaround this season. Despite them not being able to compete in the tournament, I think that they had way too much of a turnaround to go from whatever 1-2 wins it was last season to a winning record, third in the CAA.
It's really a shame that they're ineligible to be in the tournament this year. It really is, because they would have been fun to watch. You can look at it that we're lucky we don't have to face them either.
Right.
So you all look at it different ways. All right, let's go to our green and gold stars of the tournament. We normally do of the game, but now we're going to the tournament. Mark, you want to start it off?
All right.
Aaron.
Yep, my my star of the tournament, excuse me, first one to go, is Eric Copes. Of course, I'm going to pick Eric Copes. Philly guy, being Philly born and bred,
right.
Got to. But started this season off with an injury and really just come on strong over the last one. I think we're going to need his grit down low this week, and I think when you go over a 3-game stretch, I think one of the most important things is to show that grit down low, because that's what's going to win. That's how you're going to grind out games. So I think he's going to have a big game on the board, big games on the board, really. And I think he's been improving his offensive game recently, which is why I think he's going to be our conference MVP this season.
Okay, now that he's come back healthy, Eric has really shown what we were promised coming in when he was back, when he was a freshman. My star of the tournament is going to be Sherrod Wright. I've been plugging him all season long. He is the backbone and leader of this team. I think he started as the leader. He's going to finish as the leader here. We know he can step up in big situations. We saw him against VCU last year. We saw him against Richmond in Richmond this year, hit that big shot. I have a quote from him that he gave. You mentioned Around the Rim with Dick Patrick. Yeah. He told him on GoMason.com, quote, "I'm excited. I'm ready to go. This is our last opportunity to let everybody know. They claim we had a bad season. We've got to prove them wrong." I think we agree that we're going to be able to prove them wrong.
We agree.
We agree that
my heart agrees.
They will be able to. Yes. Keep it on this side. Let me ask you guys a quick question on my player. One shot left. Who's the ball going to?
I don't think there's any question. It's got to go to Sherrod.
Got to go to Sherrod, right?
I mean,
I thought it was going to Sherrod when it went to Eric Copes a couple games ago.
And we won.
And we won.
But that's why, and I think that's why I'm picking him as my go-to guy.
I think if you have your choice, it's got to go through Sherrod Wright. As I mentioned before, though, this is a very guard-heavy league. I think all of our success really relies on the success of Brian Allen on our road to the CAA championships. Top assist-to-turnover ratio in the conference. The first half against Drexel. We've brought that up several times. We're up 27 points. That first half, Brian Allen was the anchor of this team. He was the heart and soul of that team, offensively and defensively, and that's what he's going to have to be. He'll have to start it up front, as the point guard, as that floor general. I think he's going to really have to step it up, play that way. Play with it. Whatever it is, play with it.
Bring it out.
Bring it out in against Drexel for 40 minutes and make better decisions with the basketball, especially late in games. You know, we mentioned the ball going to Sherrod Wright late in games, or Eric Copes, or whatever the case may be. Get it to somebody. It doesn't always have to fall on his shoulders. But to me, the success of this team moving into the CAA championship does fall on his shoulders.
I mean, the biggest thing is that assist-to-turnover ratio. Number one in the CAA. I mean, that's unbelievable.
Right.
You know, I'm so happy that we have that guy on our team. We got that number one guy because I think assists really open up the court out there.
And I think if you said that going into this season, all three of us would have said,
I would hate you.
No. Like, there's no way Brian Allen will be your
Right.
number one assist-to-turnover guy in the conference. And, it just shows how much, growth he's had during this season.
Absolutely.
Absolutely. The first game, keep in mind tomorrow, 3:30 p.m., first game of the day, as the Patriots will take on the Drexel Dragons. Our pregame show starting at 2:45 p.m.
Yep.
and we'll be on with a Courtside Seats postgame show.
Yep.
Right about 6:30, about an hour or so after the game is over. I want to give our producer, Jake McLernan, Tyler Byram, Jack Riley, Rob Horan, Iram Doggan Kelly, Paul Erb, and the rest of the staff at Green Turtle a special thank you for this CAA preview show presented by the Green Turtle. Make sure you come out into Old Town Fairfax, 15% off for students with a Mason ID. Take the Q bus, park your car, and for free.
For free. You
Gratis.
can't beat that.
There's no reason not to come.
It's free parking, free bus, 15% off.
Great food.
Yep.
Great food, delicious food. You should come right now, actually, because the
Come
show's
hang
over
out.
now, so you can come hang out now.
We want to hang out. Yeah.
Come hang out with us right now at the Green Turtle. Park your car, take the Q bus, all gratis. We will see you guys tomorrow in Richmond as the Patriots take on the Drexel Dragons for the first round of the CAA tournament. For Mark Mansdorfer, Daniel Zimmett, I'm Cody Norman. Thanks for watching.